And welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us once again. We actually had another trade here today in Major League Baseball. We'll get into that in just a moment. But make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. It really does help us out. If you guys are new here to the Upside, we cover Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NBA, and the NHL. You can follow us on Twitter at UpsideSN. Find our Facebook page, Upside Sports Network, as well. But appreciate you guys joining us on Tuesday evening. Probably bring you some live baseball tomorrow afternoon, so make sure you check us out for that. Welcome back, JG. Appreciate you for coming back. Notice you changed your avatar there. It is going to be a very exciting couple of days, so let's kind of kick things off with the trade that actually did happen today. A couple of prospects going to Boston in exchange for Kike Hernandez going back to the Dodgers. Now remember, Kike Hernandez started his career with the LA Dodgers anyway, went to Boston, signed that lucrative deal anyway, and we'll see what ultimately happens for the Dodgers going forward here at the deadline, if they're going to continue to add some pieces that are familiar with the Dodgers in the past, or if they're going to try to add some platoon pieces, or are they going to go out there and try to get the big fish in Shohei Ohtani. But good trade here for the Dodgers. I think they gave up a AAA guy, got 10. They got another guy who has thrown 10 innings so far in the big leagues as well. So kind of a depth move anyway for the Red Sox, who really needed to clear some roster space, especially with some of the guys coming back off of the injury list soon. Kike Hernandez did not really have a spot on this team going forward, but just looking at the way the Red Sox are lined up right now, Jarren Duran has solidified himself as an everyday outfielder for the Boston Red Sox. He looks like a linchpin of that team right now. Rafael Devers is still the best player on the team, but Jarren Duran certainly is the most exciting player right now in a Boston Red Sox uniform. You have Verdugo that takes up another spot in their outfield, as well as Machida as well. I can't remember his full name off the top of my head, but that's going to be your outfield right now, so there really wasn't a spot for Kike Hernandez. That also means we're probably going to see a trade of Adam Duvall from the Boston Red Sox, possibly going back to the Atlanta Braves for the third time in a row. I mean, at what point do the Atlanta Braves just say, all right, we'll sign you to a multi-year deal, instead of constantly giving up prospects to bring him back in year after year after year? At some point, they got to learn, hey, maybe this guy is just a good fit on our team, and just decide to get it. Masataka, thank you, JG. Yoshida, there you go. But the Red Sox certainly don't really have a spot for Kike Hernandez right now, and that goes for their infield as well. Trevor Story is expected back at some point this season, so he wasn't going to be able to man shortstop either, and so there really wasn't a spot for him. But Adam Duvall is probably the next piece to go on that Red Sox team. Now, this does not mean that they're going to be selling here at the deadline. I think this is more of them just clearing up some of their books right now, trying to clear up their roster, and they could still make some additions here at the deadline. Think of what they did back in 2013, 2014, right around there, when they won that World Series. They kind of piecemealed it throughout that season, kind of went with clubhouse guys, chemistry-type players. You think Johnny Gomes, you think Mike Napoli, those type of players who won them a World Series. That seems to be the route the Red Sox are going this year, so keep your eyes peeled for the pieces they may add. They could always use a starting pitcher. They could use some more bullpen help, but don't expect them to play in the top end of the market for guys like Stroman, for guys like Snell, Hader, Ohtani, pieces like that. They aren't going to be in that market. They're going to be in the market more of the Lance Lynn's of the world, that type of thing. So keep your eyes peeled for the Red Sox being active here at the deadline. But Dodgers adding Kike. Another bit of news anyway is that the St. Louis Cardinals appear that they're trying to get a long-term deal done with reliever Jordan Hicks. It may or may not happen, but if they don't get a deal done, he is a 100% lock to be traded if they can't get a long-term contract done. We shall see if they're able to get it done. Sounds like there's at least momentum towards a deal. We'll see if that momentum carries through and actually results in a signed contract, because if it doesn't, it's another piece that's likely not going to be there after the August 1st trade deadline. So appreciate you guys joining us. In case you guys are new here to the Upside, again, we cover Major League Baseball, the NFL, NBA, and the NHL. Major League Baseball's trade deadline is August 1st. We'll be live for you guys all throughout that day, breaking down every single trade that happens, all the rumors that break. We will be live all day long. So make sure you hit that like button on this video, hit that subscribe button, turn on those alerts for Twitter anyway. As far as when we do go live, we will post it there as well. That way you guys will be notified when we are live, and you guys can join us. I know not everybody can take off on a Tuesday in the middle of or at the beginning of August anyway. So if you're working, turn on your YouTube and join us here at the Upside. Some more news out of the Minnesota Twins is that they're apparently generating some interest for their outfielders. They have a plethora of them. They've had a lot of guys get a lot of experience out there this year. They have Kepler, Larnach, Wallner. They have Gallo, of course. Kirilov is kind of a little bit of a first baseman at this point. Nick Gordon. They have Buxton as well. So they have kind of an overload of position players, at least outfielders, if you will. So they could maybe trade from that kind of a surplus of players and try to see if they can add here at the deadline as well. Do I think they're going to go out there and make anything big? I don't think so. So no Ohtani trade. Rosenthal thinks it's not likely. I'll put it this way. Every single reporter on the face of the planet is going to tell you it's not likely until it happens. I mean, that's just what happened with the Juan Soto thing. It's just what's going to continue to happen right now. You remember with the Juan Soto trade that we saw with the San Diego Padres is that, hey, there's a lot of momentum. There's all kinds of talks around it. But as big of a piece as he is it really going to happen? The cost is so exorbitant. I really don't think it's going to happen. Everybody was hedging their bets that it wouldn't happen. And then, he got traded. Now we all can be shocked and write all the articles about all these kinds of things. Don't believe everything you see right now, especially around the trade deadline. Do I believe that he's 100% a lock to be traded? No, but I don't think it's 100% one way or the other. I think we're probably looking more at a 60-40 proposition right now. And every day, every win, every loss right now is going to tinker with the math right now in that LA Angels front office as to whether or not they should trade him or not. In my opinion, I told you guys, months, years ago now, that they should have traded him 2 years ago and gotten the most value that they could have possibly gotten out of him. They could have gotten 9, 10 premium prospects for Shohei Ohtani at that point. Reset their clock. We could be talking about the Angels being the upstart team right now with an exciting future. All kinds of prospects. And here we are still talking about them missing the playoffs, being on the outside of the playoff picture, looking in, trying to add at the deadline. Should they add at the deadline? Are they going to be able to trade for enough to be able to get them over into the wild card? And once they do get into the wild card spot, are they even going to be able to make noise in the postseason? It's the same old story for the LA Angels, and I've been beating this drum for 2+ years now, is that they should have traded Shohei Ohtani. They didn't do it then. They didn't do it a year ago. They didn't do it this offseason when they still could have probably gotten 7, 8 good prospects back. Right now you're probably talking 3, 4 premium assets and maybe a couple other lottery tickets at the back end of this right now. That's the kind of trade package that you're going to get for Shohei Ohtani. And that's still one heck of a package for a rental player. Don't get me wrong. But we're talking about a guy with, for those of you who are Rangers fans, you guys know I'm a Rangers fan, think back to the trades for Cliff Lee for the Texas Rangers. They included 4 premium assets. The Cole Hamels trade, 5 premium assets. 3 premium and a couple of filler. I'll put it that way on the Hamels deal. But anyway, you get my point. That's for one type of player. Pitcher only. Ohtani is both an all-time great slugger right now, the best player offensively in all of baseball. He's an ace on your staff. Whether or not he's pitching like that right now or not since the All-Star break, take it with a grain of salt. He's still an ace on your staff right now, depending on where he ends up going. But still a great player, and they would have gotten a hefty price tag for him, even if they had just traded him 3, 4, 5 months ago in the offseason. And we'll see what ultimately happens with Shohei Ohtani. Do I think he ultimately gets traded? Like I said, I thought they should have done it 2 years ago. They didn't listen to me, so we'll see. Welcome back, Mark. It's been a while. Love Ohtani on the Jays, but our farm system is thin. I agree. I think you would have had the pieces, say, a year, 2 years ago to go out there and make a trade like this, but I don't think you have the pieces within the organization right now to make an Ohtani trade. I know you guys would love him. I know there's a lot of rumors right now about the D-backs checking in on him, the Orioles checking in on him, the Jays checking in on him. The Orioles, I think, have the prospect capital to do it. I just don't think it's smart baseball for them to do it right now. They're just on the up-and-coming, swing of their, contention title window, if you will, and trading away their future right now, cutting that window short, I think is a huge injustice to that team. They need to kind of do a little bit around the edges. Think of the additions they've made over the past couple of years. Small, 3, 4, 5 type starters, Kyle Gibson, that type of player. They need to keep doing that small increments of a success, bringing in some veterans to push them into a playoff position, and really kind of take that next step in all of their young players' careers. They still got more talent coming through the pipelines, and that's the thing I worry about with the Shohei Ohtani trade with the Orioles, is that I think it would really kind of short-circuit their success, if you will. It might be great for this season. I don't think he would sign there long-term, and that's why I think it would be a foolhardy decision for them to do so. But there are no shortage of teams interested in Shohei Ohtani. A lot of reporters out there, reporting on the widespread interest for Shohei Ohtani, as there should be. I mean, he's a very dynamic talent, once-in-a-lifetime type of player, but he is the best offensive player right now in all of baseball. That alone is going to generate a hefty price tag, even considering that he's just a rental. But then you also have to factor in he's probably going to be your number 1 or 2 starter in a playoff series. And that's something that's really going to speak to a lot of these front offices with a week to go here. Sounds like the Angels are going to wait until a couple of days before the deadline to make their decision as to whether to buy or sell as an organization. I think the Ohtani decision needs to be independent of that decision. I think they should have made that decision a couple of years ago, but again, they didn't. And here we sit. You run the risk of losing the most impressive player any of us have seen in our lifetimes, as far as being able to play both ways and do both very, very successfully. And I think the Angels missed the boat on this one, but we'll see what they decide to do here at the deadline. If they really try to convince Shohei one last time, even though I think it's a foolhardy decision to do so, they might just choose to go that route. We mentioned a little bit yesterday on the Jonathan India story about him possibly being available here at the trade deadline. And apparently a lot of news markets picked up on that news story anyway. And the front office basically had to go to Jonathan India after basically saying, hey, maybe we would be interested in talking about Jonathan India for a controllable young starting pitcher. And they basically reassured him there's almost zero chance you're traded. Almost zero is not the same as zero, by the way, in case you didn't catch the difference there. I still think there's some young, controllable starting pitching that's out there that would interest the Reds. Think back to a year or so ago, they trade away Castillo, they trade away Maile, and now they're looking for those exact type of pieces to go back into their rotation. Kind of funny how things work when you do find success so quickly, the way the Reds have found it this year. But the Reds, the Rangers are among a couple of the teams that are expected to be the most active at this year's trade deadline. Houston Astros are expected to be very active as well. But we shall see how things work out. The Rangers right now are struggling with injury and poor performance on the mound from their starters right now, more than anything else. Their offense, which should have gone down with the loss of Corey Seager, Adolis Garcia missing a couple of games, they actually put up some runs, but it's their pitching that continued to let them down. And we'll see what they decide to do. I think they're going to add at least one more reliever here at the deadline, whether that's a Josh Hader type from the San Diego Padres, somebody who's on a rental type of a contract, or if they go for a guy like David Bednar to try to give them some more club control after the season remains to be seen. They have the prospect capital to go ahead and make any type of a move that teams want to make this trade deadline season, so we shall see what ultimately happens. Some more news out of the Cardinals, anyway, is that they expect to move DeYoung and several pitchers. Sounds very interesting. O'Neill had apparently over a dozen scouts at the game the other night anyway, when he had that 3 RBI double. I think it was last night in the game for the Cardinals. But I know, Sarah, you're one of our regular viewers. You're very excited probably with that news that they're going to move on from DeYoung anyway. They do have plenty of arms to move at this year's deadline, not just starting pitchers, but they have tons of relievers that they can move as well. You think of Flaherty up front, Michaelis, you think of Montgomery, you think of their bullpen pieces and Hicks. Then you look at their lineup in particular. They've got all kinds of outfielders that they can move, not just including O'Neill. They could move Carlson. There's all kinds of different pieces that they could move out there in the outfield. And then, of course, they have the cornerstones of the franchise, pieces like Nolan Arenado, who I doubt very much is going to move at all. But some of the crazy offers that you're going to hear for Shohei Ohtani might pry some of these unheard of players to be available here at the trade deadline, when other teams realize, hey, maybe we could take that exact package that they're willing to trade for Shohei Ohtani, and we'll give him our star players so that we can kind of reset things. The Ohtani news in this whole thing is kind of throw a wrench into a lot of teams' plans. So keep your eyes peeled for what teams might suddenly make star players available, because the prices that are being bandied about for Shohei Ohtani might drive up the prospect haul that they get back for their player. But Cardinals are expected to move quite a few players. Then we haven't even mentioned Contreras as well behind the plate. Things have not worked out well at all, to put it mildly, and they would love to get off of that money, I am sure. But a little bit of news out of San Diego is that they're going to try to at least hold things together anyway here at the trade deadline. I still think there's an outside chance that they move on from Hader or Snell or both, but I don't think they're going to make any additions to this club. I don't think they're going to trade away any cornerstone pieces to it, so we shall see what happens. Trade the whole White Sox organization for Ohtani. It can't be any worse. Well, I think the Angels would probably accept that trade first and foremost. There are some pieces on that White Sox club that would be very interesting. Just look at, Dylan Cease, Robert alone. Those two pieces, along with Eloy Jimenez, would probably bring you back the same prospect capital if you just turned around and traded those guys, than as what Shohei Ohtani will bring back with just 2 months left. Not saying any one of those players is Shohei Ohtani. I'm just saying you trade all three of those, you better get more prospects than what the Angels are going to get for Shohei Ohtani. Robert is that good of a player. Cease is that good of a starting pitcher, even in a down year. There was a couple other headlines I saw before I got on the air. Shocker, Chris Bryant is headed to the injured list once again. A little disappointing there, honestly. Talked a little bit last night about the Milwaukee Brewers and the possibilities they have here at the deadline, whether they're going to turn around and trade a guy like Christian Yelich, try to save some money and re-sign their 3 free agents that they're going to have after next season, and that's going to be Corbin Burns, Woodruff, and Adames. If they decide to hold on to Yelich and trade Burns, who they have a little bit of an acrimonious relationship with right now, could be very interesting. Looks like the Astros are going to go up 3 now after that Maldonado home run. It's now 4-1, bottom of the 7th. Looks like Texas is going to lose this game. Let's check in on the standings right now. Right now, Houston is sitting 2 games back of the Texas Rangers. Looks like they're going to close that to within 1 game right now, with a series finale tomorrow in Houston. They could go into the weekend basically tied for the division lead in the American League West. The thing with the Astros is they're going to get some pieces back from injury. They're going to get guys like Jose Altuve, Urquidy, among others, back right after the deadline anyway. So those are kind of be their deadline additions. I think they're also going to add one more starting pitcher to the mix as well. There was some talk about Cease. That's not going to happen. I think they don't have the prospect capital to make that happen. But I do think there's a possibility that we could see them, go out there and get a guy like Marcus Stroman, Giolito, somebody of that ilk. Not a bad performance, though, by Cody Bradford of the Texas Rangers, filling in for Nathan Eovaldi, who got skipped in his start today. They noticed his velocity was down in his last start, even though he did not give up a run against the Tampa Bay Rays. I'm excited to see what Houston's going to do the second half of the season. I thought the second half of the season would be where the Astros really put their foot down. They've lost Altuve for a little bit more of the season than I thought they would originally, when he originally had his injured hand. But they've managed to hold down the fort pretty well. And Texas currently sits on top right now in the AL West. Depending on what the Rangers decide to do at the deadline here, I think is really going to determine what happens here the rest of the way. I think if the Rangers just hold pat with what they've got and don't make any additions, I think they're going to fall out of the top spot in the AL West. They'll still finish in a wild card spot, but I don't think they have the bullpen to really do anything right now in the postseason. I think they are going to add one bullpen piece. If they do, somehow convince the Angels to give up Shohei Ohtani for that package we mentioned in our video earlier here on YouTube. Make sure you check that out about the package that we put together for Shohei Ohtani, headlined by Ezekiel Duran, among others. If they're able to get something like that done, some type of impact type starter / bat, something that goes in that lineup every day, and make that bullpen addition, I think it's going to be a neck and neck all the way to the end of the season. I'm very curious to see what the Rangers ultimately decide to do. Do they believe in this team, or do they believe, hey, DeGrom's out this year, we'll push our chips to next year? But they are having a historically great offensive season. I think it'd be foolhardy for them to go ahead and miss out on the opportunity that they've made for themselves this year, even without having Jacob DeGrom available and healthy. Jay Jackson is best reliever of all time. No. Appreciate you guys joining us. Going to do some trades here in just a moment, so make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe button. Really does help us out. Let's go ahead and flip it over to the screen here. You guys can check out the standings here. Alrighty, let's get into some trades, shall we? First thing we'll do is we'll have a little bit of fun. I know a lot of you guys post on this site, baseballtradevalues.com. I know a lot of people are starting to use it in their Twitter responses when they say, hey, who won this trade? Who won that trade? Who got more value? Baseball Trade Values is still a very good site to get an approximate value for what your team may or may not be giving up. It's very difficult to kind of compare it to other sports just because baseball's different as far as how they handle contracts and those kinds of things. And so this is a great way to just kind of figure out, hey, did my team get equitable value back from my player? So looking at the trade here, the one that happened today was the Enrique Hernandez, also known as Kike Hernandez trade. The value there, very similar values. That we can kind of see what happened there. Another trade that did happen, Taylor Hearn from the Rangers for cash, essentially. The Pierce Johnson trade. Rockies, of course, got a little bit better out of that one. Would I say they're fleeced? Absolutely not. And then this trade still gets a lot of traction right now on this site. I don't think this is the type of trade the Rangers would do at all. I think they're going to try to hold on to Sebastian Walcott. I think they view him as a superstar in the making right now. Just if you've never heard of his name, you might want to look him up. He's absolutely quite a dominant, dynamic future star in the making, and I don't think there's anything the Rangers would do right now to move him off of this club. So they're going to hold on to him right now. Well, possibly one of the best young prospects the Rangers have ever had in their system that nobody's talked about yet. That's quickly going to change right after this season once people reevaluate their top 100 lists. Walcott's going to be a regular fixture in that top 100 for the remainder of his prospect status. But as far as Shohei Ohtani, you can kind of see what his value is right now, right around 44, 45. So it gives you an idea that it's going to cost at least 2-3 premium assets and maybe a couple filler pieces beyond that, just to kind of round out the package for Shohei Ohtani. Let's check out some of these trades. One name that's been on the market for a pretty long period of time right now is Michael Lorenzen. His value is a 2.4. I don't think the Tigers are going to give up Vierling easily. I don't think they're going to give up Lang. So I think this trade is a little too much all in here. But as far as Michael Lorenzen being available here at the deadline, the Reds are said to have interest. The Astros are said to have interest along with the San Francisco Giants. So keep your eyes peeled for his name coming up here at the trade deadline. I do expect him to move. Logan Gilbert is another guy that's been bandied about before. Mariners, this would be kind of a sell and buy, if you will. I think they're still going to get a nice piece back for Logan Gilbert, but something like this is probably what it would take. If the Cardinals really want a starting pitcher to come back in a trade for one of their outfielders, it might cost Nootbaar to do it. But if they really want to rebuild that rotation quickly, Gilbert certainly has started to show some of that promise here at the major league level, and something like that could work for both sides. Kind of two sellers working together to find what the other side needs to make it work. Here's kind of your Marcus Stroman, Cody Bellinger type of trade. Notice how their values are lower. These are rentals, buy low as far as contract length anyway. It's not going to cost you as many top end prospects. Notice how all these prospects coming back are lower level. That's something that could work. Yankees have done the bulk route as far as trades in the past, and that seems to be the route they would like to go once again here at the deadline. If Ohtani's not available, I think that's the route they will go. If Ohtani ultimately is made available and the Yankees decide, hey, we're going to shove all our chips to the center right now and bring in Shohei Ohtani, then maybe that's something that could work for them to finally trade Jason Dominguez. You can check out that video as well on our YouTube page here to see what kind of package it would take to get Shohei Ohtani. A lot of rumors anyway about a lot of teams needing some starting pitching. Baltimore Orioles are no different. A guy like Dylan Cease who has some club control left, it's going to cost a pretty penny to get it done. Do I expect them to trade multiple pieces off of their Major League roster? No. But the White Sox certainly would love to get some premium assets back if they decide to move Dylan Cease. So this might be an interesting type of a trade. This would be a type of a trade where the Orioles may make just because they're going to get some club control out of Dylan Cease, whereas Shohei Ohtani, you're getting 2 months. That's it. And there's no guarantee he's going to stay after that. So I think there's a lot more risk in a Shohei trade, but Dylan Cease or a controllable starting pitcher, that might be more to the liking of the Baltimore Orioles for some of their top prospects. Lane Thomas is another name that's been bandied about here at the deadline. We'll see if he ultimately is moved. I think he's going to be one of the better DH-type bats that's available here at the deadline. We shall see what happens. Welcome in, John. I think Texas should go after Cease or Verlander. Our pitching, both starting and relief, is killing us. It shouldn't cost us compared to Ohtani. Well, I agree on both fronts. I agree that they do need to go after a starting pitcher. It sounds like there's some news on Verlander. We'll get into that in just a second. But Cease, I would love to have Dylan Cease if I'm a Rangers fan right now, but that's not the controllable starting pitcher I want right now if I'm Texas. I mentioned a minute ago about the Milwaukee Brewers maybe doing some interesting things here at the deadline. Remember how the Josh Hader trade for years was rumored about, and then out of nowhere it came for the San Diego Padres? I think this might be the same type of thing this year for Corbin Burnes. If that's the case, look at the numbers Corbin Burnes has been putting up over the last couple of starts. He's ace-level, dominant, Cy Young-level Corbin Burnes over the last couple of starts. He hasn't been that earlier in the year, which might be part of the reason why the Brewers may be willing to do it. They have all their issues to try to re-sign Woodruff and Adames, and they have already soured their relationship already with Corbin Burnes. But I would really like to see Corbin Burnes be traded to the Rangers rather than Dylan Cease. But as for Dylan Cease specifically, he's having a little bit of a down year. I think the prospect cost is going to be way too high, and I don't think he really improves the Rangers too much because he's having a down year. Yes, I think he's going to be improvement over guys like Andrew Heaney in the rotation. Do I think he's going to be game one starter for you this year? Probably not. That's going to be Nathan Eovaldi. If you get Corbin Burnes, then we're talking about something a little different. Looks like the Astros are challenging the play right now. Of Marcus Semien kind of sliding into home. I don't think this one's going to be overturned. We shall see. Ohtani needs to be traded to the Yankees. He wants to be a Yankee. I don't know if he's ever said anywhere. Wow. Call is overturned. Rangers got hosed at home last night, and now I don't know how he's called out right there. Bochy might get tossed if he comes out of the dugout there. Rangers got hosed in the 9th inning last night. They called him safe originally, and then on review you can clearly see he's tagged out. But they decided not to overturn it. They said call stands. Today, kind of a tie at the plate there. I guess they're trying to say Semien never touched home plate when he stopped on a dime right on the edge of home plate. I get it, but Wow, Rangers getting hosed 2 nights in a row at home plate in Houston. Am I doing YouTube full time yet? Unfortunately not. I would really like to, but unfortunately you really got to get this subscriber base up and viewer time up. But going to start doing quite a bit more here with the trade deadline coming up and see if we can get my sports card business going. But to answer the rest of your question there, John, our pitching for Texas anyway is killing them. I agree. They need one more starter, I believe. I think they could use a guy like Corbin Burns that I just made the argument for. Relief pitching, I would like, just think of, if you're a Rangers fan right now, what does this club really need? They have 2 relievers that they can count on. That's it. Brock Burt's had a nice year, but he's not somebody you can really reliably count on. We've seen him blow too many games. Jose Leclerc has had decent numbers, but we've seen him cost the Rangers a number of games already. I just think the Rangers need at least one more elite level reliever to kind of take some of the pressure off of Smith and Chapman. You saw during their win streak coming out of the All-Star break that that kind of really was what their go-to move was. Going to Chapman, going to Smith for an inning or 2+ innings worth of work on back-to-back-to-back nights. And you just need at least one more dependable arm back there. I would prefer 2. So I think it'd be asking too much for them to get both guys like Hader and Bednar. But they have the prospect capital to do it. And if they think they have a legitimate shot to win the World Series this year, I think they absolutely should push their chips to the center. If you guys can put up your hand, how many fingers would you have up to represent the Texas Rangers championships? There you go. None. And just getting that first one, as good as a team the Rangers have this year, they have a legitimate shot to go as far as they possibly can with as prolific of an offense as they have this year. So we shall see how invested the front office really is in this team. And I think they really are. I think the Aroldis Chapman deal really shows you they're willing to go out there and make the move. Bochy was really the driving force behind that move as well, and he's been fantastic for the Rangers. Gave up his first run as a Ranger last night against the Houston Astros, that 3-run home run. As far as starting pitching, as I mentioned, Corbin Burns, but there's other options out there besides elite-level starters. Maybe a guy who's familiar with Texas, maybe could resurrect his career a little bit. Lance Lynn has one of the league worst home run rates this year, has some of the worst ERA this year. But coming back to Texas, a high strikeout guy, a guy that doesn't walk a whole lot of people, could be very, very interesting. Charles, as far as to how to answer your question, how many more subs do I need? Probably in the neighborhood of like 10,000. Trade their future for this year? Well, even if they did trade a good chunk of their future, they would still have plenty to do. Or they'd still have plenty left. Say they did the Shohei Ohtani trade. That was one of them I just showed you guys in a video earlier. You guys can, if the Rangers did that trade, they'd still have enough prospect capital left to go out there and make 1 or 2 more trades for a reliever or whatever they decide to do, and then they'd still have enough left to have a guy like Evan Carter or Wyatt Langford still in the future of the club as well. So should be a very interesting time for the Rangers. Sounds like they're going to be one of the most assertive teams, according to both Jeff Passan and Ken Rosenthal. And we'll see what they decide to do here at the deadline. Looks like the Mets are on top of the Yankees right now, 9-3. Ouch. Yankees playoff hopes getting a little bit of a drumming the last couple of weeks anyway. Check in on our standings right now. Yankees have dropped to 5th in the AL East. Let's check the wild card standings though. They currently sit 2.5 back of the last wild card spot. Well, I like your comment there, John. Two different things. First, Corbin Burns, absolutely love. I would give up a very similar package to what the Padres did for Josh Hader. I would even go even beyond what they did. Esteury Ruiz was kind of the key piece of that trade. Everybody at the time thought that was a little bit of a lower-end return for Josh Hader. And Esteury Ruiz turned out to get them a dynamic, controllable young player back. in Contreras in the offseason. Remember that 3-team trade with Atlanta and Oakland? Um, I think something very similar could happen with Corbin Burnes this year. And so kind of think of it like a 4-for-1 type of a trade that could happen there, maybe a 5-for-2. Rangers do like to do that in the past, where they get the one big starter and then maybe a middle reliever out of the deal as well. As for Josh Smith, absolutely great character, couldn't agree more. His bat, I don't think his bat really needs work. I think he's a contact hitter. He's proven at the minor league level that he can consistently hit that level of pitching. He just hasn't been able to get consistent at bats here at the major league level. And that's, I think, been the issue. His opportunity really came when Corey Seager went out of the lineup first. Ezekiel Duran seized that opportunity and took those at bats that were going to be there for Josh Smith away. And then good on Ezekiel Duran, earning that spot, beating out Josh Smith for the playing time. That's great on Ezekiel Duran. That's why his value is so much higher right now. But if you look on baseballtradevalues.com, Josh Smith's trade value right now is around 15, 16, 17. That's really, really high. Speaks to what they think of his bat and his multi position abilities anyway. Kyle Tucker hits another long ball. Telling you right now, he's going to be the MVP of the second half of the season. But anyway, back to the Josh Smith argument. Great defensive player. Pretty much anywhere you can depend on him to do the right thing defensively. Maybe not have the greatest defensive range because of his size, but he's not going to disappoint. He's not going to make error after error at any one of the spots you put him at. As for the bat, when he does get consistent playing time, I think he's probably going to end up being like a 280 hitter in the majors. And do I think that's going to be on the Texas Rangers as far as where he gets those at bats? Probably not. I think right now he's kind of a souped-up version of Charlie Culberson last year, and I think every team needs one of those type of players, but you don't necessarily want to lose him, for nothing in a trade. I'll put it that way. So he has great team aspects to him as far as you can use him all over the place, and his bat is at least serviceable at the major league level, but he's never been given a consistent level of at-bats to be able to get the job done. So say the Rangers were still losing this year. We would be talking about Josh Smith getting more playing time, possibly seeing Marcus Semien get a lot of DH time and allowing Josh Smith to get more time in the field. Corey Seager off of his feet, more DH time. We'd be seeing Josh Smith getting a lot more at-bats if this was a losing team. But this is a first place in the American League West Texas Rangers. He's not going to get those at-bats when those other guys are healthy. Think of what Brad Miller has been through this season as far as how long it had been between starts for him. His last start before the injury to Seager and Garcia was in May, the very beginning of May. It had been 2 months. He had even been on the IL. They didn't put him back in the lineup when he came back either. And he's Brad Miller, yes, I get it, but he's a veteran. And that just goes to show you when your team is rolling, like Bochy's had this team going, he wants to keep trotting those same guys out there over and over and over again. It does worry me as far as a fatigue factor down the road. I wonder if they should have included more guys in the lineup regularly, like a Josh Smith, like a Robbie Grossman, even though those guys aren't, Corey Seager, but maybe just get them off their feet for a day. Keep them fresh throughout the season. I think that's what you're seeing right now with Nathan Eovaldi because they didn't really have the opportunity to do that earlier this year. They're having to do it right now in a key series against the Houston Astros because they saw his velocity drop and they don't want any other issues to happen because he's compensating for that loss in velocity by overthrowing and then causing an injury that he has to miss significant time for. So that's why the Rangers are skipping his start today. But Josh Smith, again, great character. Defense is there, flexibility, being able to play him everywhere. I think his bat will be just fine if he ever gets consistent at bats. So maybe a team like the Pittsburgh Pirates, if they do get the David Bednar type trade done, there's a possibility that they could include Mitch Keller in that. I'm not exactly as high on Mitch Keller as a lot of people are out there. I would want just David Bednar because I think the Keller aspect of that would be way too expensive for the Rangers. But Josh Smith could be one of the pieces that could go in that type of a trade. Maybe another pitching prospect, a Cole Winn, somebody at the AAA level, Glenn Otto, maybe even Brock Burke. But you're probably looking right now, if you're watching the Ranger game, at possibly the last time you see Spencer Howard in a Rangers uniform. This kind of shows you how thin the Rangers are right now on a pitching staff, and that they're going to have to add to this rotation and bullpen. He really has had no success at the major league level. And we saw last time when he was called up, got shelled and then immediately sent back down to the minors. So this is just the state right now of the Rangers' starting rotation and bullpen. That's why they're going to have to make some additions here at the deadline. But the former top prospect that we got back in the Kyle Gibson trade, along with Ian Kennedy, this is his last chance to really make an impression for that Rangers front office. 1-1 here on Bregman. We'll be curious to see what ultimately happens with that bullpen in Texas, what they decide to do. Let's have some fun, though. Let's flip over to baseballtradevalues.com and kind of make some trades here. We've done some Shohei Ohtani trades. We mentioned the Corbin Burnes trade. Let's just see what that would actually cost. Let's pull up the Brewers here first. Pull up the Rangers. All right, Corbin Burnes, value of 41.5, very similar value to a Shohei Ohtani. Remember, Shohei only has 2 months left. You're getting an extra year left of control here with Burnes, and you get to try to keep him on your roster by signing him to an extension. So the Brewers have a ton of outfield prospects, so they're not really going to want any outfield prospects back. So let's see what could a trade look like for Corbin Burnes. Remember, the Rangers probably not going to trade anybody consistent off of their major league roster right now. Maybe some back-end guys or guys like Josh Smith could be somebody that they might have interest in, kind of a utility type of player. Brewers have had a field day with those type of players in the past. Just for kicks and giggles, though, we're going to start with a starting pitcher. Let's say they include Jack Leiter to kind of headline this deal, name recognition, all that. He hasn't really performed at the minor league level, but he has elite ability. And if he ever gets, his head on straight, this is the type of prospect that the Brewers could really build around if they can get him going in the right direction. So let's include Leiter here. Now remember, the Brewers are trying to stay in contention as well. You don't really have a spot in the rotation for him right now, so maybe you trade one of your starters. So let's kind of go down to the major leagues level here for the Rangers. We're just going to throw in a starter here. Where is Heaney? Just going to include him here. We're going to include Otto in this type of a trade. That gets him 3 starters. Let's keep Heaney. Otto will be the guy they flex into that rotation. Remember, they don't really need outfielders. So let's say they include Acuna as kind of the big top-of-the-end prospect that they're going to get back in this type of a trade. So there's Acuna, Leiter, and Otto. We're about 8 away. Rangers don't really have a spot for Harris right now. They don't really want an outfielder. So let's go ahead and do Harris. That's a pretty fair deal right there for Corbin Burnes. High-end talent pitcher, struggling in the minors. They get somebody to be their number 4 or 5 starter right now for this season. Somebody who can already hit or already be on the big club. Harris right now could probably be a first base DH type player for them. And then Acuna, kind of the big overarching prospect for them as well. So if they lose Adames, which they're hoping not to by saving the money and not re-signing Burnes here, this is the type of trade that would give them some security if they couldn't get something done with Adames. What do you guys think of this type of a trade? Rangers get an ace, a Game 1 starter for a playoff series. They save a ton of prospect capital for an Ohtani trade if that were to come down the pike. And remember, this type of a trade is what's going to happen before we get to the final couple of days before the deadline. This is a big organizational, franchise-changing type of a move. So these types of trades are going to happen this week. So it's Tuesday right now. Deadline is next Tuesday. You're going to see these types of trades. If they're going to be big ones, they're going to happen probably before Sunday, if I had to guess. After that, remember, Sunday's the day the Angels are going to make their decision most likely as to whether to buy or sell. Then you're going to really see the market either pick up for Shohei, or it's going to really cool down and they're going to go to all these other options that are out there. Lower level trades at that point, though. But this is a trade I think really works for the Rangers, solves their needs in the rotation. I'm going to flip this thing to a 3-team trade just for a moment. We're going to put the Brewers back in here again, because I want to show you one other thing. We're going to put the Rangers in the middle, and we're going to put Pittsburgh on the other side. Now, this is not going to be a 3-team trade. I just want to do 2 trades at once on the same screen. Let's start with the Brewers, of course. They're going to include Burns. Rangers are going to send Acuna to the Brewers. Harris to the Brewers. Leiter to the Brewers. And Otto to the Brewers. It's just too much value going the way of the Brewers, I believe. I would rather save Owen White if Shohei Ohtani becomes available, because that's the type of player it's going to require to get Shohei Ohtani. Not saying I wouldn't ultimately do it to save prospect capital. If you included him instead of Leiter, you could probably save Leiter, obviously, and maybe save yourself Harris and Otto, and just have kind of a 2-for-1, and then maybe fill it out with some lower level prospects that only have like 1 or a 2 million total value anyway as far as a trade. But I would rather hold on to Owen White for a bigger fish. I mean, don't get me wrong. Burns is a fantastic fish, but I would rather hold Owen White right now because he's at the AAA level ready to go. Now, the other side of this trade I wanted to show is the Pittsburgh Pirates. Remember, I told you I'm not as high on Keller as everybody else. I think this prospect value is way too high. I just don't see the effectiveness right now. I'm not saying he couldn't eventually become or get there, but right now he's still a 4 ERA type pitcher for me. So I would rather go for a guy that's going to help me this year and Bednar and still give me 3 years of control in my bullpen after this year. And he's been consistent, which is rare for a bullpen piece. Bullpens are like famously mercurial. One year you could have a sterling, 1.5 earned run average. The next year you could have a 5 ERA, something like that. And it just doesn't work well. Let's kind of flip this over to the Rangers. We're going to start this package with Smith, just to give us some value here. I think he's the type of player Pittsburgh really would love to have. They do need some starting pitching, though, so you got to keep that in mind. Both the Brewers and the Pirates are both going to want some starting pitching. Now, the one guy I'm not trading, though, is Brock Porter. I really don't want to move him if I'm the Rangers. He doesn't have that high a value right now for a trade anyway, but I think he's going to be one of the toughest pitchers in all of baseball at some point. He was the highest rated high school pitcher out of the draft last year, and he's done nothing in the minor leagues to change my opinion of him. So we'll see what his future holds, but he's the one guy I really want to hold on to as far as starting pitching prospects if I'm the Rangers. So now remember, we already included Otto going to the Milwaukee Brewers, so we're going to have to start this package with Cole Winn. Now this does start to limit yourself if it does get to a Shohei trade, but we're going to start with Cole Winn to give them a starter here. We're going to give them another pitcher off of the Major League roster, a bullpen piece in Brock Burke, who's had a nice year for the Rangers. But if you get Bednar, Bednar's probably going to be your 7th, Chapman's going to be your 8th, and Smith is going to be your 9th. Burke then would be relegated to a middle relief, which is what he was great at last year, but you have tons of options in the bullpen right now for that type of role. So just looking at the roster, or what the trade could possibly look like, Bednar worth 27.7. Smith, I think, is a little inflated at 17, but he's a good all-around type utility player. Then you're building the package around a Cole Winn, who's going to be on the Major League roster, I believe, for the Pirates if this trade were to go down today. Burke takes over in the bullpen for them. And you could add one lower-level prospect if you like, just to kind of round out the trade. Let's say you give up... let's say you give up Yuri Rodriguez to the Pirates. There you go. Pirates, I think, would love this type of a trade. They get tons of pitching. Nobody necessarily at the very tip-top of the, starting pitching spectrum, but Cole Winn has an opportunity to get there. If you look at this trade, if you're a Pirates fan, you're like, hey, why not, get us a better prospect back? Let's go ahead and try that route as well. Let's take Smith out of this trade. Welcome back, Ramon. We're going to leave Burke in there. We're going to take Winn out. We're going to leave Rodriguez in there. Go ahead and throw in another starting pitcher there. And then as far as a higher end prospect, I think they do need pitching, but if they want a higher level prospect than Smith, because I think this is an inflated value for Smith, maybe they could go the route of a Zavala. Or maybe they go two guys and go Foscue and Zavala, whatever the case may be. But we're going to go ahead and throw Zavala in there for now. And there you go. You save Winn, you get a little bit higher value of an outfield type prospect here. You still get a couple of lottery tickets for the starting rotation. And then you get a bullpen piece to fill in for Bednar right now. Would this be enough to overwhelm me if I'm the Pirates for Bednar? Probably not. That's why I would rather go the other trade route or maybe do something a little bit different. But I really like the Brewers aspect of this trade. Appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Let's go ahead and clear off things here and just kind of do another trade. Let's just do a clean two-team trade for you guys. Let's pull up the Cardinals. I know we've got a lot of Cardinals fans around. And let's go ahead and pull up, let's say the Astros. I know the Astros are looking for some starting pitching. Cardinals have a bunch of it that they're trying to move here at the deadline. Robertson to Rangers. You saying you'd like to see Robertson to the Rangers, or are you saying that's happening? Because I don't see that. Home run for the Rangers in the top of the ninth with 2 outs off of Presley. It's now 4-3. That's an interesting one. Well, I thought this was going to be a one-game lead for Houston going into the series finale, but there is still 1 out. Or, excuse me, 2 outs now. My apologies. And Leody Taveras, who's already homered in Houston this year, is up. Rangers have really not come back on many teams at all this year. In fact, the first half, I don't think they had one come from behind win all the first half. Off of a good pitcher, too, in Presley. Maybe that'll get things going for Mitch Garver. Oh, just checking what Robertson to the Rangers would be? Okay, we'll do that. We'll do that one next. Watching the very end of the Rangers and the Astros game. 4-3, Houston in front after that Mitch Garver 2-out, 2-run home run. Makes it a 1-run game. Marcus Semien on deck. There are 2 outs, though, so let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Swing and a miss. Taveras has really struggled so far this second half. First half, he was all-world as far as a number 9 hitter, but the second half has not been kind. I think he needs some time off. Jankowski, I think, needs to take a day or two in center for him. But Jankowski's another guy I think needs to... Oh, and a hard hit ball to right. What a leaping catch by Tucker to save the game. Wow. Whew. Presley shaking his head at that one. Second half MVP coming through with the glove on that one. I don't think that would have been a home run, but wow. Tavares smashed that one. Couple of exhilarating games there in Houston to start the series. This is going to be the final series in Houston for Texas this season. Some good baseball, though. All right. It's now officially a one-game lead for the Rangers in the AL West. So let's look at the Astros, what they could do. Off of the Major League club, they could go after a guy like Montgomery. They could go after Flaherty. Let's just say for kicks and giggles, they go after a guy like Flaherty. To say they don't want to pay the price of going after a guy like Stroman or Cease. They just want to add around the periphery. So they go after a guy like Flaherty. I would put Helsley in this type of a trade as well, but he's on the 60-day IL right now. He's not going to help anybody, at least right now. But let's just keep it simple. Let's just do Flaherty here. This would give the Astros their number 4 or 5 type starter to kind of round out their rotation this season. It's not going to cost them a whole heck of a lot to get it done. But Flaherty does represent kind of the last successful rotation for the Cardinals, if you will. Has high upside. Baez, like we mentioned last night, is knocking the cover off of the ball at the minor league level. So if I'm in a team that's wanting to do a trade with the Astros, he's the guy I want right now off of this roster. Then you're going to need somebody kind of lower end on the prospect spectrum just to kind of round out this 2-for-1 type of deal here. And Maton's been good. You're not going to get him. I'm just going to throw a name on here. Let's just say they get a second lottery ticket, lower level prospect, whatever the case may be. Notice how the value here, 8.2 versus 4.1. You're getting a major league player for your playoff run. You're going to have to give up more, and this is only about in terms of trade value, $4 million more. So not too bad of value. Let's just check and see what it is. I think it's going to be a little bit of an overpay, and it is, which all things are here at the deadline. So this would be a trade that could work for the Cardinals. They would add to yet more outfielders to their outfield, bunch, but they'd get the hottest prospect in the Astros system in Baez, and maybe they could get a pitching prospect just to round things out. Something that could work for the Cardinals. So there you go, Cardinals fans. You get to see a little bit of what Flaherty might bring you in a trade. Remember, you're not going to get somebody's top 100 prospect for Flaherty, but you might get some guys in the next couple hundred. Let's go ahead and clear this trade out. Ramon, I told you we were going to do Robertson next. Let's just see what it would cost. 2-team trade here. We're going to go the Mets and the Rangers. Robertson, 0.3, so not a lot of value. Not going to cost a lot for the Rangers, but the Mets are going to want some premium prospects back. Let's see here. Say they go after Ornelas and Rodriguez. Lower end prospects who are never really going to affect the future of the Rangers, but could mean something in a year or two to the Mets. That could be something that works out pretty well for both sides. Robertson's been good, very good this year, much better than expected, but this is the type of trade you could see for a Robertson. The more interesting trade for the Mets, though, is what's going to happen with Justin Verlander. Now, I told you guys, about 10 minutes ago that there was a possibility Justin Verlander could be moved here at the deadline. The news out of New York today is that Justin Verlander, while he may be on the block, has that no trade clause, and he may not want to go anywhere. He did sign the free agent contract, after all, to go to the Mets. And of course, it's coming from the New York media. Take everything with a grain of salt when you talk about the New York media. But they do tend to lean more towards the Mets and Yankees as far as the preference for any type of move. They made the right decision here. They made the right decision there. And then after it doesn't work one time, that's when you notice some of the issues that the media starts to pick up on. We saw that this offseason anyway with Justin Verlander. The right decision was to move on from Jacob deGrom, and the right decision was to bring in Justin Verlander. Both decisions obviously haven't worked because neither one of them, the New York Mets are not in a playoff spot right now. Verlander missed a month of the season, and the team just hasn't worked. The money, or just throwing money all over the baseball field, just hasn't worked for Cohen. And that was one worry that I had about the team coming into the year, is that sure, they have kind of an all-star team, but are they a team? Are they a group of individuals going towards one common goal, or are they a bunch of individuals working towards their own ends? And not saying that's what happened this year for the Mets, but I'm telling you right now, they were not a team at any point this year. They got an all-star manager in Buck Showalter, Hall of Fame level manager in Buck Showalter, and it just hasn't worked there. So we'll see what happens after the season for sure with that front office, with that coaching staff, but we shall see. But Verlander, the news today is that he may not want to be traded this year and may ultimately stay in New York this year. Now, if he does take a trade, I imagine it's going to go to a contender, obviously. I think the favorites for Justin Verlander, if a team were to pony up the price to get him, I think it's kind of a 3, maybe a 4-team race. I think the Yankees are probably fourth, kind of in the outside looking in on that. I don't think it's very likely the Mets trade him to New York or to the Yankees anyway. Not exactly the most friendly of bedfellows, if you will. The next best option on that list, I believe, would be a team like the Texas Rangers. If the Rangers are willing to bring in a guy like Robertson, maybe the deal expands to include a guy like Verlander so the Mets can get a better deal back as far as total prospects. It might be something that works out. Second on my list is going to be the San Francisco Giants. They've been connected to Verlander a couple of times already over the last couple of days. I think that rumor in particular is the one that's causing the New York media to say, hey, maybe that type of trade in particular, going to the Giants, is one he would say no to, because the Giants don't really have a World Series chance. Playoffs, sure. World Series, no. But I think the number one contender for a Justin Verlander here at the deadline is going to be the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, they're all trying to save payroll right now in LA, and so they're going to have to eat pretty much all of that contract if you're the Mets. But the Dodgers certainly have the prospect capital to make it happen if you're willing to eat that type of deal. They're trying to save money for their pursuit of Shohei Ohtani this offseason, so something like that could work out for both sides. Let us know in the comment section what you think about Justin Verlander being traded, and where do you think he could possibly go? And do you think Verlander would accept the trade if a deal is indeed hammered out? But appreciate you guys joining us again tonight. We will do a live game for you guys tomorrow afternoon. Make sure you guys join us for that. And again, tomorrow, 8:30, we'll be back live for you guys every single evening at 8:30, breaking down the latest from the MLB trade deadline. Post a couple of videos for you guys tomorrow as well. Got the day off of work, so I'm going to get a bunch of things done. So make sure you check us out. Hit that like button on the video. Hit the subscribe. It really does help us out. Check us out on Twitter at UpsideSN and on Facebook at Upside Sports Network. Thank you guys again for joining us once again for this evening, and had a lot of fun talking about a bunch of different trade ideas with you guys, and hopefully this evening we're going to start to see some big-time trades start to happen, and with any luck we'll have some big trades to talk about. Maybe Corbin Burns gets moved out of nowhere. Maybe we'll see Justin Verlander say, hey, I will accept a trade. And who knows, maybe even the LA Angels will decide, hey, we've decided on Shohei early. We're either going to keep him or we're going to trade him. But really appreciate all you guys' support. Thank you, Ramon. Appreciate it. I really do enjoy doing this kind of thing. When I was a kid growing up, I was always talking sports with my dad. That's kind of the one thing we still talk about literally all the time. We have a lot of fun with that. Never really had anybody else to talk about sports with. Everybody always had down here in Texas, go, how about them Cowboys all the time? And I am a Cowboys fan, don't get me wrong, but there's sensible Cowboys fans who realize, hey, we do have a decent quarterback. We don't have Peyton Manning at that time, or we don't have Tom Brady, or we don't have Patrick Mahomes. We get that. And then you get the crazy loons who are all like, hey, we're going to win the Super Bowl this year, next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. So I never got to really speak with sports with a lot of you guys out there, so it's nice to finally find a community of sports fans who actually has a level head and can understand actually intelligent conversations when it comes to trades, when it comes to free agent signings, roster construction, roster building, team building, and really do enjoy this with you guys. So thank you guys for making this so much fun, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow. Make sure you join us, hit that like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow evening. Y'all have a great night.